Part 49. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 492. For the magician at the level of Ziwei, the entire continent of Orient has become a small village. From Violet to Par, only 3 consecutive long-distance transmission spells can be reached. Of course, only magicians with enough abilities in space spells can resist the turbulence of space that increases with distance. Still familiar Par, compared to the ever-changing Violet, the king has not changed much, but it seems that the cold is coming. The streets of the whole city are missing a lot of people, and a few pedestrians who are hurrying will be themselves wrapped in a heavy coat and walked fast. However, when Ziwei came to the vicinity of the Notre Dame of Par, it was discovered that it was a sea of people. The islands of the Notre Dame of Parly were crowded with people on both sides. They all had the same characteristic, that is, coughing, cold, weak. Ziwei used stealth spells to cross the crowd and came to the side door of the Notre Dame of Par. The paladin guarding the gate quickly opened the door for him after seeing Ziwei. Obviously, he was ready. If the crowds outside the Notre Dame of Par are mostly civilians, there are many high-ranking dignitaries in the Notre Dame. It seems that there is a large flu attack on the whole city. Under the guidance of 2 white-robed priests, Ziwei crossed a passage and passed through a portal with a faint golden light, entering the underground of the Notre Dame of Par, and the core of the entire mourning sect. Mourning Refuge. Almost half of the mourning sects of the sects gathered here, and they devoutly believe in the Lord of the Morning, although their present power depends on the gift of the glorious Lord. Mr. Westway, you have finally arrived. Inspired by the arrival of Ziwei, the younger lady of the morning, Yulichia appeared, and the surrounding pastors and knights immediately kneeled down and greeted her. I hope it is not too late, Lord of the Morning. Ziwei took off his black hat and bowed his tribute. Inside the Chinexai refuge, Ziwei sensed the diffuse light in the air, and even if it was enough to infect the entire cold of Pi, it could not cause any trouble. This cold seems to be very serious. To know the warriors and knights, when they become formal professional, the body's immunity and resistance have been greatly improved, and it is easy to get some small diseases. But this time, Ziwei saw many patients in the hospital in Notre Dame. This is not a simple cold. The wind from the north is pure, but when it is 50 kilometers away from Wangdu Pai, it is strangely added with a decaying and filthy atmosphere. This is an unprecedented atmosphere. Most of the citizens of Ali have got the flu, and their bodies have become very weak. Urihaya, the Lord of the Morning, frowned. I feel that this is a conspiracy and attack against the Church of the Glorious Lord. The role of holy water is greatly reduced. The eradication of the flu has caused so many dignitaries to come to the Notre Dame, but the brilliance of the glory that we can get is being reduced at a rate visible to the naked eye, and only a few limited people can be cured. The antithesis bishop has now fallen into the siege of the nobles is overwhelming. To know that Wangdu Pai Li is one of the 3 major cities of Orient, which already has more than 2 million people, the impact of this cold on the entire city is terrifying. How does the Palace of Versailles respond? The king of the king is the master of this kingdom. The martial law has been ordered. There is no need to get out of the door. Try to stay at home. The school is closed, the factory is shut down, and the public is not allowed to gather. Ulixia shook her head gently. The first people who contracted the flu have begun to die. Although the chances are not high, the panic caused is spreading, so there are more and more talents outside the Notre Dame. For thousands of years, the Church of the Glorious Lord has been guarding humanity. Although the most important treatment resources and divine power are mostly used for dignitaries, in order to win faith, the civilians have also received a lot of care. Many diseases that were originally enough to kill. After the removal of the holy water, it disappeared. So now, even civilians can use their income to buy a holy water to keep at home and use it at a critical time, but now, holy water can't fight this sudden flu. The omen of turmoil. Ziwei frowned. In the world of Orient, construction is not easy, but mass killing is very easy. Every legend has almost the deterrent power of nuclear warheads, if it is in the dark. The power is ready to move, then there must be a huge shadow behind this. You must confirm the enemy's primary goal. Ulixia, 11 Weis Hung said, the Lord of Glory is about to go, this cold is aimed at the Morning sect or the French kingdom. Who is the spreader of the disease? The investigation is clear and the decision is made. I am studying the characteristics of the cold, I want to find out how to get rid of the cold, you can come with me. Ulixia nodded and turned to take Ziwei to the Chamber of Secrets. This is a large secret room. The gate guards two heavily guarded paladins. When they see the arrival of the Lord of the Morning, they pay tribute to one knee at the same time. This is the demigod of their faith, the source of spiritual support and strength. After opening the door, I found that there were 10 beds in it, and there was a patient lying on each bed. They all had one thing in common, that is, pampered and noble. 7 patients were women, 4 were old people, and 3 children. Ziwei recognized an acquaintance at a glance, the director of the French aristocratic coat of arms, the Duke of Créteil. Their condition has been severe, not only a cold and cough, but also a serious state of weakness. 2 people have been unconscious. Even in the bright base of the Morning Refuge, the ubiquitous light energy can't help them get rid of the disease. The virus is very tricky. They are encroaching on the power of my healing spells. Unless you use the 7-ring magical silver healing hand, you can't completely remove it. Ulixia's thoughts were passed on to Ziwei's mind. The biggest difference between the pastor and the mage is that their number of the gods is strictly limited, and it depends entirely on the gift of God. The magic power of the 7-ring magical silver healing hand is enormous, and the Lord of Glory is about to. When you leave, you can't easily use it when you are warned. Even if you want to use the 7-ring magical skills, you must use the light source. Can you allow me to study the condition? Ziwei looked awkward. No problem, Ulixia nodded. Ziwei's vision swept through the room and eventually walked over to the bed of an aristocratic girl. He knew the girl, a daughter of the Duke, and Ziwei used to take care of her as Joe Bledley. The girl's complexion is pale and she can hardly see the blood. Her body is slightly hot and she has lost a lot of weight. Ziwei held down the girl's wrist, and Zero has begun to put the nanorobot into the girl's body. The humans in the 35th century AD have completely overcome almost all diseases. The average life expectancy of human beings has exceeded 200 years, and the longest life has lived more than 300 years old. Therefore, the age of Ziwei's former 50s is still a standard. Youth is nothing but old. Really in-depth observation, the discovery is even more shocking. The appearance of the girl looks very delicate and pitiful, but most of the internal organs and flesh of the body have begun to have lesions, even irreversible destruction. This is not an ordinary chill, but a premeditated death wave. Even now all the priests in Wangdu have no regrets to use their only divine power to purify evil and disease, but they can only temporarily stop the spread of the disease. If the problem is not solved fundamentally, I am afraid the whole city. It will soon become a city of death and decay. This discovery made Ziwei shudder. Did the turbulent era begin? The forces of darkness can't wait to spread the dead plague, knowing that the end of the original contract has not yet arrived. This is to make Ziwei firmly believe that it is necessary to participate in the establishment of this dark parliament. This will be a collective appearance of all the forces in the shadows. If you miss it, you will never know who else is enemy. The Ziwei juggling method generally takes out a large number of experimental instruments. The beige machine has a smooth metal texture, which can bring a warm feeling and hope for life. This is an experimental instrument for blood pulse analysis. The microscopic observation of the biological organism is very detailed. Zero has extracted the virus samples collected from the aristocratic girl's body and put them into the experimental instrument to start the analysis process. In the eyes of Ulixia, she flashed the light. She looked at these metal instruments that she had never seen before, and looked forward to the next wonderful performance of Ziwei. A few patients who have not yet fallen into a coma are watching Civi with hope and hope that he can get rid of the disease and relieve the pain. Eulizia, I need you to cooperate with me to complete the experiment. After half a magic time, Ziwei took the freshly observed observations and his brows wrinkled slightly. In addition to the interior of the morning sect, all known to Eulizia is the newest brightest virgin of the Church of the Glorious Lord. However, this identity is also very glorious. These dignitaries are willing to come to the Notre Dame during the life and death, it will be born. Hope is pinned on Eulizia. Eulizia received them not purely out of pressure, she even saw the glory of faith. If she can save these people from the edge of the death line, then she will harvest the most pure and devout faith. This is the future of God, the biggest reliance. At the request of Ziwei, Eulixia used several commonly used 2 to 5 rings of common magical techniques for the aristocratic girls in the coma. Ziwei and Zero have been monitoring the status of the girl and seeing how the virus works against the light of the gods. It took about a quarter of an hour, and the experiment was finally over. Ziwei and Eulixia came out of the room and sighed behind them. How? Eulizia looked at Ziwei with interest. She had accepted these patients for a few days and could not find a way to get rid of the disease with the least cost. I need more understanding of the source of light. Ziwei is a true color, and without a good understanding of the source of light, Ziwei can't figure out how Guangming's power works. No problem, this is why I invited you to Par, Eulizia nodded. We can start at any time. Just then, a priest wearing a white robe came to the side of the two, and his face was awe-inspiring. Lord Don, the angel of the Holy City Vatican arrived, and the Bishop of Anthos is meeting them. I want to see you. Actually it is a guest from the Holy City of Vatican. It must be known that since Pope Benton's order of the Holy Retreat was issued, almost all the essence of the Church of the Glorious Lord of the Orient world has been shrunk to the Franconian plane. Only the Church of the Morning is due to the existence of Eulixia. Only in the insistence of Archbishop Anxies, the majority of the clergy were retained. The Holy City of Vatican and the Par of Paris have formed a de facto barrier. The two sides have been silent to each other. This is the first time since the Holy Retreat that there has been a visit to the Holy City. Who is the messenger? Ulysses asked. The head is Cardinal Godia and the silver messenger Modelny. A legendary cardinal, a legendary paladin, is a big deal. More importantly, these two people are the representatives of the morning sects within the Church of the Glorious Lord. The so-called morning sect is to think that the glory of the Lord is about to leave, to transfer the letter to the Lord of the morning and to protect her belief that the gods will ignite the fire and glory to the throne. This is the best choice to truly guarantee the sustainability of the light. Olympia turned and apologized to Ziwei. Sorry, I need to go up. It is not the time for you to introduce it. Ziwei nodded and understood that the Glorious Lord Church must have a variety of adherents within the first century of the Orient First Force. Eulizia benefited from her unique position and identity. There will never be a lack of supporters. When Euclia appeared in the quiet room of the Notre Dame of Par, the Bishop of Anthos spoke with the two messengers and the atmosphere was very harmonious. At the Odia Larna Theological Seminary, Bishop Anthony and Godia were the best classmates and friends. The deep friendship between the two has been more than 50 years, and I have not seen this retelling for many years. The original strangeness and barriers disappeared. Godia looks like an ordinary old man, but he is the cardinal of the Church of the Glorious Lord, once the archbishop of the entire federal parish of the Rhine. Old friend, after you responded to the sacred retreat of Benton 8, I thought that you have lost your ambition and just want to be old in the place of Francon. The elegant smile of the Bishop of Anthony sound. Godia drank a cup of black tea. Once, in the Rhineland, there is no Lord of the morning, the Lord. So, the power of the Glorious Lord's Church in the Five Kingdoms has all existed in name only, Bishop Anthony asked with a heartache. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 493. Even if he chooses to believe in the Lord of the Morning, there is no competition or disagreement between the Lord of Glory and the Lord of the Morning, one is destined to leave, and the other is the future that is bound to shine. Bishop Andus has always been proud of the millennial heritage of the Church of the Glorious Lord, but now this glory is destined to dissipate. Without the power of the glorious Lord, the Church is like an ordinary person who has lost his arms, even taxes, fields, even churches and monasteries themselves have lost their guardianship. A large number of missionaries have been expelled by nobles. Gaudia shook his head. It is really a memory that can't be looked back. The glory of the Church has long been devastated by the eyes of the Holy Norman Empire, said the Bishop of Anthony, which one of the human emperors of the Orient continent was not crowned by the Pope or even the Cardinal, which emperor or noble person would dare not accept the baptism of light. After Pope Benton XIII, the 5 consecutive generations of the Pope were really just trying to maintain it, just like a plasterer, but now, the end is coming. What is the status quo of the Franconian? Plain. Francon is, after all, the Church has been operating for hundreds of years. Now all the elites are shrinking here, and it is very safe for the time being, but the long-term consideration of how the Pope can do it is not something I can understand. It is only the Archbishop of the Rhineland, and is not the Cardinal of the Vatican in the Holy City, so it cannot influence the decision-making of the Church's top. Pahali suddenly appeared in a large area of flu, even to the extent of death. The holy water almost lost its role. This is a terrible accident. Bishop Onsi transferred the topic. I think you also saw now, the Notre Dame has become the only place in the heart of the sick to be able to survive. Is there no solution for the Lord of the Morning? The silver messenger Modilny suddenly broke the silence. Modilny is a knight of devout faith in the glory of the Lord, standing on the top of the Templars. He is a legendary knight who is versed in divine spells. The silver messenger is the will of his glory for decades. And the honorary name obtained. The Lord of the Morning has already accommodated nearly 10 people with serious illnesses for observation and analysis. I hope she can solve this crisis as soon as possible. Bishop Ansius smiled slightly. The two came from Farron, but they came from afar. Willing to contribute to the development of the Morning sect. If Bishop Andus also regards himself as the Archbishop of the Kingdom of the Glorious Lord, he will naturally be wary of the arrival of Gaudia and Modilny, but now Ansisi has positioned his position as the future. The Pope's Pope, then he is cautiously welcoming the arrival of the two legends. Gaudia and Modilny looked at each other and were about to speak. Eulizia appeared in the meditation room. Looking at the golden figure of Eulizia, feeling the pure light power around her, Gaudia and Modilny's eyes flashed at the same time. Only close contact with the Morning Lord, only then can she confirm whether she has the hope of being able to seal God in the future. Eulixia is naturally willing to recruit two legends to join the Morning section. After all, the glory of the Lord and her power are almost the same, the harmony is very high. Eulixia can get two legendary believers, and the two legends, it is a mutually beneficial thing to regain divine power. Although the location of Francon is beautiful and rich, there is only a darkness in front of my eyes, where I am destined to endure the fate of indulgence, and avoid the inability to win the final victory. I, Gaudia, hope that the Lord of the Morning will receive me. Faith, I am willing to follow you forever. Gaudia gave Ulricha a knee-high knee and offered his faith and loyalty. Although Ulysses is only a half-god and can't gain strength from her faith, Gaudia apparently made a prudent decision. He will never easily repent, it will be a crime to sin a demigod. Strong. The silver messenger Modilny also offered his own faith and loyalty, while Eurychia maintained the smile of the goddess, accepted the two legends and their close associates to join the Morning sect. In this way, the paper strength of the entire Morning sect is once again turned over, which can be said to be a huge improvement. Bishop Ansisi is very happy, and Gaudia is also very interesting. Although he can say that he is equal to Ansisi in the past, he is now very respectful in front of Angzis and has a low profile of letting go. After a simple chat, Eurychia resigned and returned to the Morning refuge. Congratulations to the Lord of the Morning, Your sect has ushered in a rapid development and growth. Zywei congratulated Eurychia. Call me Eulysia, you can, Master Zywei. Eulyxia frowned. In fact, whether it is Gordia or Modelny, they have many choices, and they are in chaos in all prospects. It's really a surprise to come to me so early in the middle of the day. There are only two possibilities, either bet ahead or not. You said it makes sense. I still look forward to their next performance. Eulyxia smiled and said, Mr. Anthony is a very capable leader. He arranges the affairs of the morning section. I rarely ask. So we have time to start to analyze the power of the source. I am ready, Eulysia. Zywei stood up and responded solemnly. Eulychia led Zywei to continue to walk down the stone along the secret road. Her body exudes a golden glow and illuminates the entire passage. The more the secret passage goes, the damp and cold it is. Then, along with the way, Zywei feels that he is gradually coming to the edge of the cold winter, and the soft and comfortable atmosphere is around him. At the end of the secret passage, even the thick stone walls are penetrated by the golden brilliance, and the surface of the walls exudes a soft golden glow, just like being in the golden fort. This is the source of light, or, it is the real eye. Eulysia opened a door, her figure melted into the endless light and returned to her true form. What appeared in front of Zywei was a huge chamber, about 20 meters high and a few hundred meters wide. There was only a warm golden yellow light in the center of the chamber, just like a sun, emitting light and heat. However, it is not too hot. Zywei felt the pressure of the powerful atmosphere in the entire secret hall, which is far superior to Victor Hugo, the Lord of the Fifth Law change he had seen. The sanctuary strongman Charles 8 Olong, and the master of music Sophie. This is the true form and strength of the Lord of the Morning, Eulyxia. She is the first light of the Orient world, and holds the cosmic source that represents the power of light. She is currently ranked the most in the whole of the Orient world. The forefront of the strongest. Except for Anthony, you are the first person to come to this bright secret hall. Oeric's voice echoed in the ear of Zywei. I am strong, but still have no breakthrough in the true God. Before I really sealed God, I would never be the public enemy of all the dark forces of Orient, or it would inevitably fall into the endless siege. The embodiment of the female image that Olympia has been using is only a small part of her true strength. This is for the sake of more convenient public appearance, and on the other hand to paralyze potential enemies and reduce their threats. After seeing the true form of the morning sun, Eulysia, Zywei naturally gave birth to shock, but he was fortunate enough to accept the invitation of Ms Yenyu to fly into the sky, and truly felt the whole moon is the of silver moon. Traces, so this shock is not enough to make Zywei out of order. So, Eulychia, can you start? Zywei politely bowed a sly. Of course, I am ready. The pure light like glass began to emanate from the inside of Zywei's body. His body was gradually shrouded in the light of the glass, and the whole person began to change toward the etheric. In front of Eulyxia is a pure source of light. Zywei has no human understanding and analysis in the human form. The sixth apostle Scarlet is only a little bit of ice and snow to make Zywei so elusive, let alone such a vast source of light. But the etheric form of Zywei can be said to be his strongest form. The soul and zero are closely intertwined. Both the spiritual sense and the analytical ability have been greatly improved. Only in this case can he have a glimpse the mystery of the source of light. Zywei has become a humanoid element with a glaze of light, and he walks step by step toward the light source in front of him. The closer to the source of light, the more the Zywei's cognition of this source is closer to the original and most authentic image, warm, bright, and people can't help but want to integrate into it. 11 Wei is really integrated into the light source, in the form of etheric elements. It can be said that at this moment, whether it is Zywei or Eulychia, they show their greatest mystery to each other, showing the origin of strength and showing the future path. From the volume and rank, the etheric element of the incarnation of Zaiwei has a huge gap with the light source that occupies almost the entire secret hall of light. However, from the energy level, the gap at this moment has been brought to the nearest. Light and darkness are inherently energy with elements. The elements of the etheric form are almost the purest and most easily transformed. The West dimensional shape that maintains the etheric form begins to try to perceive the breadth and mystery of the bright source of all directions, and Ulysses also did not hesitate to revoke her own alert and show hers Terry to Zaiwei. Starting from the simplest accumulation of fluorescence, the use of the light source of the kind of the Morning Lord, Ulysses, corresponds to the use of light magic in the face of Zaiwei, and Zaiwei uses this method to sense the light. The most subtle changes in the source, trying to control the laws and rules through analysis. This is a mysterious state. The spirits of both people are highly concentrated, and the spirits are clear. Only by maintaining such a form can we convey this unspeakable and incomprehensible charm. Only in this form, Zaiwei can really understand the source of light. Zaiwei's brain has instilled a lot of mysteries about the source in a short period of time. If it is an ordinary magic master, I am afraid that it will be shocked by this vast message in a flash, but Zaiwei has zero help. The crystallization of the highest human wisdom from another 35th century ad began to gradually analyze, process, and package the impact of this message, just like a processor and a transfer station, transforming the mysterious message that could not be understood and accepted into the West. The knowledge that the dimension can accept and understand. Even in the center of the light source, Zaiwei's etheric body still exudes dazzling glare, and it becomes brighter and more pure. For Zaiwei, the current experience is definitely a huge opportunity. The so-called traditional means of analysis, understanding, and experimentation apply to the core of the origin and the cosmic truth, just like a leafy boat in the ocean. It is a kind of lonely search, a helpless struggle, but very few people can really harvest anything. This is why the entire Orient world can cross the door and come to the last layer of the intersection of the mortal and the gods. The semi-god strong is so rare and most of them have an extraordinary origin. Without the open attitude of Ulysses and the analysis of this source of light, Zaiwei will be confused and unknown in the future after the sanctuary. It may take thousands of hard explorations, and perhaps it needs to be lucky enough. Only then can you find the other side of happiness in the endless ocean and cross the most solid relationship. But now, although Zaiwei has not really set foot in the legendary field, this door has already opened a gap for Zaiwei. Although it is not so wide, it is enough to accommodate Zaiwei's eyes full of curiosity, so that he can look at the world outside the door. The problem with Ulysses is that she can give her strength to believers, but before she truly seals God, the gains from the faith of believers are far less than the consumption of the gift, that is, she is sitting on such a vast source of light. It is also unable to resist this increasing consumption. Therefore, she hopes that Zaiwei can use the way of parsing to process the original mysterious message into a data that can be parsed and circulated through books and scrolls, that is, to turn the magic into a spell. The magic is given by divine power, but the spell is learned. Although the two are often compared, they are completely different in nature. Zaiwei has experience in constructing elemental inscriptions, changing inscriptions, protective inscriptions, and summoning inscriptions, but the source of light is a source of strength that is not used in the magician's spell system at all, and this time, Zaiwei is not stepping from the foundation to lay a foundation. In the end, the high-rise building was built. Instead, Eurykia directly instilled the mystery of the light source in a way similar to priming, so this is a completely novel experience for him and Zero, and needs more inspiration and creativity can be achieved. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 494. In the connection between Zaiwei and Ulysses, the passage of time seems to have completely lost its meaning. This is an exchange beyond the mortal level. Even Eulichia is derived from the essence of the etheric elements of Zaiwei. Some new insights. When the connection was finally broken, Zaiwei found that he had reverted to a human form and lay down on the stone floor of the secret temple. The whole person was exhausted to the extreme, and he was refreshed to the extreme, as if he had been soaked in the hot spring water for a long time, and soon fell into the most sweet sleep. When Zaiwei woke up again, he found himself lying on a white and comfortable bed. The cabin did not have a window. The room was lit with dim light. His exhaustion had completely disappeared and he was restored to the best state of vitality. How long have I slept? 18 hours and 37 minutes, it is now 9:12 a.m. the next day. Zero gave a response. What about the 10 patients in the shelter? The Duke of Cretial seems to have been fainting, and Eulizia has to go. I guess she is going to use high-level magic to save the Duke. What I want to say is that the source of light is very different from what I imagined. Compared with the elements that are not worthy, it is more orderly. This means that the corresponding inscriptions of the source of light may be more than I expected. It's simpler. Zaiwei stood up and put on his shirt. Let's get started. Zero nodded at Zero, sitting at the desk with Zaiwei, began to simplify and apply the source of light. The ultimate goal is to build a complete system of light power that allows the pastors of the morning sect to learn and comprehend. Brightness and elements are two completely different sources of power, which makes Zaiwei's initial start on the construction of inscriptions deadlocked. The large amount of information conveyed by Eulichia is a mysterious feeling that cannot be expressed in words. Define and describe. Zaiwei understood the troubles of Eulichia. As the first light of the Orient world, she naturally mastered some of the light sources. These forces are instinct for her. She can give others but can't teach others. When Zaiwei studied the inscription on the power of light in the morning refuge, the panic caused by the strange cold has begun to erupt completely. The fuse that broke out is crowded outside the Notre Dame of Par. More than 10 of the deceased citizens had horrific lesions, their skin began to wrinkle, and became as mild as mildew, and then died in pain and despair until the moment of death. Continuous whine. This kind of horrible visual and auditory shock, as well as the sensation of empathy, feels the vitality of the body gradually disappearing in the body. The citizens infected with the virus finally lost their senses, and began to wave as a wave of waves. The gates of the Notre Dame. It is the knights of the Church of the Glorious Lord who guard the gates. They wear bright and beautiful silver armor. At least they are the strength of the professional. They are enough to easily crush the citizens at the gate and guard this sacred hall. However, even after a wave of citizens were stunned and thrown into the corner by the guardian knight, the crowd behind them was used to go forward, as if they had entered the interior of the Notre Dame, they would get the ultimate relief. At the top of the Notre Dame Cathedral, Bishop Anthos and Bishop of Godia, the silver messenger Modalny, looked at this crazy scene with a look of awe, and any one of them could hardly think that these civilians would dare to attack the sacred the church, going to the big say that this is a god. Looking at this crazy group of people is like a group of walking dead. Godia sighed with a hand on the railing. It's troublesome. It's been a day and a night. There is still no move in the Palace of Versailles. The King's Majesty is also taking the opportunity to exert pressure on the Lord of the Morning. Lord, the eyes of the Bishop of Anthos rose slightly and flashed a chill. After all, it was Paris, the capital of the French kingdom. It was such a big chaos that the appearance of the King's Guards and other elite troops was an absolutely abnormal signal. We can't let this situation continue, we must take drastic measures, otherwise the scale of the impact will continue to expand. Modalny is right. But these people still belong to the people of the kingdom. We will arouse their greatest anger by doing this. They are in the of a strong desire to survive. Bishop Anthos can of course order the suppression, but this is only the last worst choice. I must go to see the Lord of the Morning. Lord. Bishop Anthos soon appeared in the morning refuge and saw Eulichia, who had just come out of the ward. My lord, the riots outside are getting stronger and stronger. I am afraid that it will soon turn into a riot. We must act as soon as possible. I have just performed a 7-ring magical technique to pull the Duke of Cretial back from the edge of death. Although it is a lot weaker, he has recovered to be awake. Eulizia made a decisive decision, and Sue's bishop, after you negotiated with the Duke, quickly went to Versailles to seek the help of His Majesty the King. Even if he did not send a soldier, as long as there is a statement, we will not be as embarrassed as it is now. The Duke woke up. This is really good news. Bishop Anthas naturally knew that the Duke of Cretial belonged to the confidant minister of Charles VIII, which is a heavy weight enough to influence the political situation in France. Bishop Anthas soon began a detailed discussion with the Duke of Cretial, personally experienced the flu virus, and eventually even the faint old Duke had a clear understanding of the horror and harm of this terrible disease, so he soon afterwards, he reached a consensus with Bishop Annecy, and left the Notre Dame de Paris by the underground secret road. He took the carriage and went straight to the Palace of Versailles. Seeing that the two left, Eulizia sighed a sigh of relief. As long as His Majesty realized the seriousness of the problem, the current crisis will certainly be resolved, but this is not the best choice. This is a big crisis that has swept the entire 2 million people in Paris. If the new morning sect can cure the flu storm, then she will reap huge faith and pious prayers. This is a for any demigod. It is very rich and delicious. Although Eulizia was able to use the legendary magic to dispel the virus of the people around the Notre Dame, but she could not cure everyone, and there must be a conspiracy behind the flu storm. Now it seems that the conspiracy seems to be exactly what it is. The more she is in this situation, the more she can't move. She can only pin her hopes on 11 Way, hoping that he can analyze the power of the light source, which will completely solve the limitations of his lack of power. The development of the morning sect will surely lead to a new and bright chapter. Your Majesty, this is a terrible plague, like the Black Death that swept through the entire continent of Orient, causing millions of deaths 700 years ago. Although it looks like a simple flu, the flu is finally the result is death. Until now, there has not been a case of natural recovery after the flu. I am afraid that if the situation continues to deteriorate, the entire Paris will become a dead city. The splendid in Versailles on the main hall, the Duke of Cretial made a generous statement and must be published. Duke, I heard that you accidentally got the flu, and it seems to be healthy now, Oolong asked with interest. I have fallen into the coma on the half dream and half awake, and even saw the shadow of death in the diffuse. It is the high-level magic of the Lord of the Virgin who has removed the disease from the body for me, the old Duke replied. Which high-level magic can cure this disease completely? Back, it's a 7th-order magic, silver cure hand. This is a perfect miraculous magic that can restore a patient to the healthiest state, so the consumption of divine power even exceeds the ordinary 8-ring. The magic, even as a legendary priest, can only be performed 3 times a day. The Archbishop of Anthas stood up and replied. Silver cures hands. I have an impression. My grandfather used to fester in the plain war that conquered the blue sky wilderness, bleeding, and eventually he was cured by this magical spell. Olane nodded. This means only a very small number of people can survive. I am afraid that the public will not see the hope of complete cure. Now the population of Paris who is infected with the flu has exceeded 10,000. How to deal with these citizens and how to prevent the remaining citizens from being infection? Your Majesty, since ancient times, the spread of the plague has relied on a variety of dirty, warm, and messy environments as a carrier. Now it is nearing the cold winter. It can be said that the temperature is very unfavorable for the spread of the plague. Therefore, as long as healthy citizens are reduced, keep warm, don't get close to the people who are already sick, then you can basically stay healthy. Bishop Annecy gave a detailed introduction to the disaster relief experience. Your Majesty, I think we need to start isolating patients as soon as possible, otherwise the Duke of Cretial and the Bishop of Anthas will not be intimidating. The hand of the king, the Prime Minister of Richelieu made his own judgment. Do my knights infect these plagues? Oran asked with a chin in his hand to the Bishop of Anthony. Your Majesty, the priests of the Notre Dame of Paris can provide protective magic for the knights who perform the isolation mission, and immunize all foreign plagues. Bishop Anthas is also a bloody. The magical protection of the plague is for the magic of the ring, each knight blessing, the consumption is not too big. However, Bishop Ansisi has realized the seriousness of the problem. His Majesty the King obviously has his own concerns. If he does not dispel the concerns of the kingdom, he will never send his own knight, and the Notre Dame will be besieged by the mob. Well, then I will send the most elite knight squadron and announce my metaphor. I will isolate all the patients who have been infected with the flu in Paris, and divide the 42 districts in the eastern suburbs into isolation areas. The 42 district in the eastern suburbs was the most prosperous place in Paris 300 years ago, but as the city center gradually shifted to the west, it quickly fell, even worse than the city where the Par daily was located. I hope that this flu plague can be effectively controlled. I don't want my king to become a city where the Black Death broke out. Perhaps it was scared by the analogy of the Duke of Créteil's Black Death. It was very decisive and made a quick decision. Bishop Ansisi breathed a sigh of relief. At least the most serious crisis has passed, but as long as he can't find a cure for the flu, the Notre Dame will be under tremendous pressure from all sides. He can only hope that the Lord of the Morning Lord can quickly come up with a solution to the problem. We should change our minds. Ziwei, according to the old template, is now a blind and clueless work. Zero made recommendations to Ziwei. I think it is true. Elements and light are two sources of power that seem to have great commonalities but are very different. We must get rid of the old ideas and find a new path. I think we can start with their unique order, edit the corresponding logic for order, and build the most basic module. Zero slightly tilted his head, revealing a smooth chin. So just give it a try. Ziwei and Zero quickly continued to invest in research. This is a very challenging job, requires a sufficiently innovative mindset, requires the most rigorous logic, requires enough experience to precipitate, and needs the most sparkling inspiration. Looking at the entire continent of Orient, there are few people who can have one of them. At the same time, there are only a handful of people who meet the four conditions. Except for Ziwei, I am afraid that some people can open innovative school spells. Title: Legendary Magician. Ulysses naturally perceives the current state of Ziwei, and she resists the desire to disturb Ziwei, leaving him enough space and time. One day and one night soon passed. After the auspicious orders were issued by Aolong, the most elite King Guardian Knights began to perform the isolation mission. The Notre Dame of Paris was first known to save. Around the Pas, the citizens outside the Notre Dame of Paris were hypnotized with a large area of slumbering spells and then transported to the quarantine area. The poor people who had been infected with the virus had to bid farewell to their families with the most basic food, clothing, and utensils. They were brought out of the house by the soldiers with the fierceness and concentrated in the isolation zone. Although the city of Paris is a metropolis with a population of 2 million, the command of His Majesty the King has been executed the fastest and most effective. In just one day, the quarantine area has been built. The most serious crisis seems to have passed. It is. 2 of the remaining 9 patients in the morning shelter have fallen into the coma. The identity of these people has long been screened out. Eulizia once again applied the silver cure hand to completely heal and harvest. These most grateful thanks to the nobles, they are also very pious about the Lord's faith. On the 3rd morning of Ziwei's arrival in Paris, after numerous bold assumptions and hundreds of experiments, Ziwei finally compiled the first rough but complete and effective rune representing the power of light. Rune was named by Ziwei as the power of light. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 496. New Wagutberg sent an urgent military situation. 14 towns around the city were infected with plague. The death toll was more than 800. The infected people have already broken 10,000, and the cattle and sheep have been killed and injured. The Leipzig fort sent an emergency military situation, the plague was raging, and there were many dead. The Martin Archon has announced that the entire region is in a state of emergency, but the situation is gradually collapsing. The city of Hanover found a large number of exiles from the north. Survivors told the entire North County that it has become a dead place. The exiles are currently undergoing the most rigorous inspections, and only healthy people can enter Hanover. The castle of the William family, the Potsdam Palace, looks like a square military camp from a distance, white high walls, blue eaves, clear lines, and a smooth beauty in the rough. Here is the center and brain of the entire Rhine Union. Every day, a command is issued from the Potsdam Palace, and it is conveyed in an orderly way to every corner of the kingdom. But now it is in a busy and awkward atmosphere. A big plague broke out without warning, and swept the northern part of the Rhine Union. This is only the 5th day of the plague outbreak. The number of people who died according to military conditions has exceeded 5,000, and the number of people infected with plague has exceeded 500,000. This is already 1/30th of the population of the entire Rhineland. On the map of the Rhineland Confederation, the black mark is marked, which represents the place where the plague broke out. It can be seen that every region in the northern part of the Rhineland is not spared, and the most serious epidemic is in Berlin. New Waga Fort in the north. Ludwig is a wise king. The Rhine Union has prospered during the 30 years of his rule. The country is vicissitudes of the country. This plague is the biggest crisis he has encountered in the 30 years of the federal administration. The plague is obviously unable to fight with the sword. The expert who is the best in this regard is undoubtedly the Church of the Glorious Lord. It is precisely because of the existence of the Church of the Glorious Lord for thousands of years that the plague of large-scale plagues and diseases is extremely rare. But with the sacred retreat of Pope Benton XVIII, the Archbishop of the Rhine Union, Godia, quickly led the most elite core priests and believers to withdraw from the Rhine Union, and now remains at the highest level of the Rhine Union. The Lord's pastor has only one fifth-order bishop. Although the fifth-order bishop can already serve as a guest of the nobility, it is obviously not possible to enter the uppermost circle of a kingdom. The bishop includes the federal ruling Ludwig, the Prime Minister Bismarck, the Knight of the Rhine Knight, and other federal. Under the watchful eyes of the top big people, they squeezed out a smile that was more ugly than crying. The ruling adult, only the scale of the plague that is currently known, even in the past heyday, requires at least one legendary priest to lead a whole white robe. Gods, it is only possible to complete the purification. Now, except for the Pope, who is located in the holy city of Vatican, I am afraid that no one can stop the plague from spreading. Is the weakening of divine power already very serious? Ludwig has stepped into his later years. Although he is still energetic, his white hair and his slack skin are constantly reminding him of this. Since the sacred retreat of Pope Benton XVIII, at least in the 5 kingdoms, this level has been ruled by the highest. The general information about the original contract is clear, but now the original contract has not yet ended, so the power of the glorious Lord is so dim. The highest level of magic that I can now perform is only a 3-ring magic. When I show it, I am afraid that I will be able to show a second circle magic in the next step. The 5th-order bishop, the face is helpless, and it is clear that as the glory of the Lord is farther away from the world of Orient, he is still maintaining the faith in the Lord with the last moment of inertia. In this way, the Church seems to be unable to count on it. Ludwig shook his head in disappointment. So the magician? Their power does not seem to be weak. If the Rhineland Federation holds an accepting attitude towards the existence of the Church of the Glorious Lord, it has always been more exclusive to the magician, so the magician who is active in the country of the knights is very rare, and the Potsdam Palace is also the whole of Europe. Lund is the only palace without a court magician. But now, Ludwig is in charge of knowing that he must rely on the magician to find out the truth of the plague. Such a large-scale plague spread is too rapid. I am afraid that it is not a natural plague. It must be that the enemy is eyeing the Rhine Union. This great country. After Ludwig's voice ended, The audience was silent for a long time. Finally, Prime Minister Bismarck broke the deadlock. As far as I know, the Duke of Nemours in Königsberg has a daughter who is following the Bau scholar in the Tower of the Thousand Laws Anthony is studying. Although he is repulsive to the magician, the first holy place of Orient, such as the Thousand Law Tower, and the Bau scholar Anthony, the president of the Abisfa Parliament, are still heard by everyone. Call the highest military conference of the Federation and invite all members of the Federal Parliament to attend. Ludwig issued the order. The Rhine Union has fallen into a huge crisis, we must be united and unanimous. Königsberg is located in the mouth of the Rhine, a port city, and the Duke of Nemours is also the naval commander of the Rhine Union, holding the only naval fleet. The Nemours family is the first 18 members of the Rhine Union. One of the great lords of the Federation. With the order of Ludwig, the entire Rhine Union operated at a high speed. 17 federal lords and the sacred Rhineland Confederate family leaders arrived in Berlin in the fastest way and stayed in the Potsdam Palace. There are a large number of flying mounts on the ranch of the Potsdam Palace. There are two-legged dragons, griffins, dragon eagle, thunderbirds, and these are the most powerful flying mounts. The big lord arrived in Berlin at the first time. 18 members of the Rhineland League sat around a large round table, and they completed the federal highest military conference in accordance with the procedures and prefaces of the ancestors' establishment of the Rhine Union. After getting the latest news from the big lords, Ludwig's ruling is even worse. The plague is far more raging than the morning military. The affected population has exceeded 5 million people and has begun to move from the northern territories, spread towards the central and southern parts. Nemours, I heard that you have a daughter who is studying at the Thousand French Tower. Ludwig ruling raised a topic against the Duke of Nemours, who was sitting third on his left-hand side. The Duke of Nemours is a very capable middle-aged man. He wears a standard captain's dress. In fact, his favorite is to drive his flagship in the North Sea. Yes, that is my only daughter, Jenna. She has shown an extraordinary magical talent since she was a child. I am not so repulsive to magic, so I arranged for the magician to give her guidance at home. Jenna is in 10. At the age of 6, she became a high-ranking magician. This is a great achievement. She quickly passed the entrance test of the Thousand French Tower and is now following the Bau scholar Anthony Tudor. The Duke of Nemours is obviously very. My daughter is proud. The 15-year-old high-level magician? Your daughter is really very good, Ludwig smiled. I don't know if the Duke can contact your daughter. I have a letter I hope I can give to the scholar. Hello, I hope they can send a magician to investigate the plague. The members of the 17th Rhine Union, the great lord of the Rhine Union, apparently knew the importance of the plague and the weakness of the Church of the Glorious Lord, so no one was excluded from the magician. No problem, Jenna left me a magical thing. I can contact her at any time in an emergency. The Duke of Nemours opened a magic brooch and a pale blue space appeared on his palm. Ludwig's letter was placed in this magical space, the blue light quickly dimmed, and the letter had been transferred to the Thousand Towers. In addition to the Thousand Law Tower, there is a magic center in Copenhagen in the north of Copenhagen, and the owner of the Golden Fortress, the Rothschild family, has always had a good traditional friendship with us. Now we need to reach out to them for help. Ludwig's righteousness, obviously, this plague is a conspiracy to secretly enemies. The big lords, I need you to be vigilant, sharpen your swords, prepare your horses, and the Rhine Union will fight against the enemy at any time. We, the Rhine people, never give in. The sacred Rhine Union is inviolable, and the glorious Rhine glory is not tolerated. All the great lords shouted in unison, and their eyes became so sharp that they would use their swords to guard this sacred kingdom. His Royal Highness, the ruling adult, is holding the highest military meeting, and the 17 great lords have all arrived, in a palace in the Potsdam Palace. The two maids are reporting to their masters. Don't call my prince, my father is not the king of this country, call me Reinhard. The young man named Reinhard is the only son of Ludwig, the blood of the William family. The heir, the name of the ancestor who called the Rhine Union and established the Great Rhine Union, was Leonhard. This is the most glorious name. Ludwig's old age, the blood of the William family continued, so Ludwig gave his son the name of the ancestor. Leonhard is his expectation for his son's future. Reinhard did not disappoint him and the people of the Federation. He was just 22 years old and he was already an 8th Order Blood Knight, only a final step away from the legendary ranks. Although Reinhard is the de facto prince of the Rhineland, he never arrogant. He picked up the sword at the age of 5 and climbed on the horse at the age of 7. He entered the Rhine Knights at the age of 13 and stepped in 9 years. Jiagong, now the 4th Knight of the Rhine Knights, has 1,000 elite knights. And Reinhard has a good look that inherited the parents, his blonde hair fluttering, his face is fortitude, his eyes are deep, his nose is high, and the whole person is like an ancient sculpture, full of power and beauty, and this looks and the figure is the one that the Rhine people most appreciate. Reinhard has been favored by countless aristocratic women, but he is self-sufficient, with few anecdotes coming, almost in the military camp of the Knights of the Rhine. The image of Reinhard is so brilliant that even the father Ludwig is in power, or other big lords and high-ranking nobles, or the Knights of the Knights, or the lowest civilians. In fact, His Royal Highness is highly appreciative, and he firmly believes that with the old Ludwig administration, the Federation will be led by Prince Reinhard to a higher level and a more brilliant future. The plague. This is obviously the enemy is launching an attack on the Federation. Reinhardt's resolute face is like a frost. They are afraid of the sword in our hands, and this only dares to hide. I must completely eliminate it. These dirty mice guard my people. The two maids were obviously shocked by the almost perfect performance of His Royal Highness, and they launched a flower idiot. I am going to ask my father, I hope he can allow me to go out. Reinhard put on his golden armor and walked out of the hall. When Reinhard pushed the door of the Potsdam Palace chamber, the Supreme Military Conference had just ended, and the big lords were about to return. They had to sit in their own districts and territories to lead the army and their people against the plague. Isn't this Reinhard? I haven't seen it for 2 years and it's a lot stronger. Heidelberg's great Lord Schwein greeted Reinhard with enthusiasm. He has 3 daughters and seems to want to take it. One of the marrying of this promising prince. Reinhardt's face showed a smile. He greeted each and every big lord with a nod, and then petitioned his father, the ruling adult. Reinhard Knight hopes to be a pioneer and conquer the enemy, eliminate the enemies behind the plague. Ludwig nodded with satisfaction and turned to ask the head of the Knights of the Rhine Knight sitting on one side, Reinhard wants to fight, how do you feel? The Reinhard Knight has proved himself with his bravery. I have no opinion. Mauser also showed a gentle smile. Well, tomorrow morning there will be a plague investigation team from the Thousand Law Tower. They will go deep into the area where the plague first broke out, looking for the cause of the plague. Reinhard, you are leading your headquarters to this. The magician squad must guarantee their safety. Ludwig ruling issued a military order. I will complete this mission. Reinhard stood straight, his eyes filled with confidence, and a standard to the ultimate military ceremony, like the sun shines. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 497. The Tower of the Thousand Laws is not far from the Potsdam Palace. Jenna quickly found her mentor Anthony after receiving a letter from Ludwig. Anthony took the letter, and after reading Ludwig, he described the great loss suffered by the Rhine Union in this plague in a calming tone and the pressure of the plague growing. On the tower of Mount Abis, it calmly looked down for a long time. Anthony has lived for such a long time. As a legendary caster named Bo Scholar, as the speaker of the Abis Law Council, his judgment on the world's general trend is much clearer than the average person. Behind this plague, there is absolutely no relationship with the group of necromancers who are in the bones, and the Dark Council that is about to be established. Judging from the overall situation, although the original contract still has the last afterglow, the afterglow of this point has been unable to stop the group's ambitions. They have begun to make an effort to change and rule the world according to their own ideas. Anthony has always believed that the magician should not intervene in the power and struggle of the world, which is almost meaningless and helpful to the growth of the magician himself, and as a magician with powerful lethality, will bring the world to the war and power struggle. A huge disaster. However, the undead King Bades, the first master of magic in humanity, created the third law of the necromancer school. The part of his body that belongs to man is too little and too little. If the plague is raging, the world will surely become a victim of his ambitions. Anthony has always had the deepest taboo for the status of the undead King Bades and the entire bone. Because Bades has done a very important thing, that is, let the life has been warned, the magician who will return the soul to the Styx can continue to maintain the sobriety and magic in this world, even if it is a lich or other undead. Identity of Anthony has seen in a long time that I don't know how many old friends, classmates, and students can't stand the passing of time, but can't calmly accept the fate of death. I finally chose to join the ranks of the necromancer, if not the Lord of Glory. The power of the gods has a very deadly restraint on the dead spirit, and I am afraid that the army of the dead will have begun to set off a huge wave in the Orient. But now, this sign has begun to appear. The Tower of the Thousand Laws must make a choice. Is it against evil or continue to be neutral? However, the creator of the Thousand Law Tower, First Law Tolafit, lost his whereabouts again. In recent centuries, he has always been so mysterious. Anthony has become accustomed to this mystery. He chose to inform ABI's other members of the Parliament and the Seventh Act de Della. The news I just got from the Master of Westway, not only the Rhine Union, but also the plague in the capital of the French kingdom, Parly, but the King of Olong ordered the martial law to separate and temporarily control the plague. Didura's face was covered with frost, and she said, obviously, this is our old friend and the old predecessor. The undead King Bades has a big hand. He has been unable to hold it out of the ground and use him. The army of the dead attacked the world. According to our placement in the capital of the dead, intelligence shows that with the Dark Parliament approaching, there are already powerful creatures from many planes entering this undead city, the Abyss Demon, the underground Dark Elves, the evil dragons, the Heartblame, Corruptor. Another magician in charge of intelligence work slowly recited a dark force of extreme evil and terror. Obviously, all the enemies of civilization and order have begun to unite, but we are still fighting each other. Delilah said, the Church, the Five Kingdoms, the Tower of the Thousand Law, and so many other forces, no one has tried to take the lead in integrating the power of civilization, and everyone will fight each other and will inevitably be broken. D'Ardela, the Tower of Thousands of Law for thousands of years is precisely because of its strict neutrality, which guarantees the status of a long-lasting magical holy place. If we are too active, I am afraid that the Dark Council will first choose to strike us, even if there is you and Lord Turafat. If the Tower of the Thousand Laws is on the front line of the war, the evil of the front is evil, I am afraid it will be heavy casualties. Another member of the ABI's Law Council, the legendary Castor, is facing die. The whole venue was silent. The forces of darkness have united, they are so powerful, and no one wants to stand on the front line of the front to counter this power. The price is so heavy, even the Tower of the Thousand Law cannot afford. Then we will give the help of the Five Kingdoms, my friends. Didura is obviously the main war faction. If the Five Kingdoms collapse rapidly, the Dark Council will never allow the Magician and the Tower of the Thousand to maintain the present high status. Although we can't stand on the front line, we can do everything we can to provide magic, material and intelligence support to the Five Kingdoms. Dixela's eyes swept through everyone present. In fact, the magicians of the Thousand Towers, including the members of the Abyssfa Parliament, came from the entire continent of Orient, and they all had their own races and kingdoms. Although many people have nothing to do with the kingdom, in the face of this plague that is about to sweep across the continent, the members of the Abyssfa Parliament quickly reached a consensus. Then, first of all, we responded to Ludwig's request for the administration, sent an investigation team to find out the cause of the plague, and tried to end this raging plague as soon as possible. Anthony swept the audience. This mission has certain dangerous, you need a legendary caster to lead the team to ensure the safety of personnel. His scholar, I am very interested in the role and principle of this plague. If I can, I hope to allow my team leader to go a middle-aged man with a blue-violet robes and a thin face. He came out. It is a legendary caster who majored in the elemental school, titled Cold Will. Very good, this time led by Lord Calcid. My student Jenna will also be with me in the face of the initiative to ask for the cryonic will. Anthony slightly decapitated. Soon, a reconnaissance squad led by a legendary spellcaster and 4 magical masters left the 1000 French tower via the transmission array and headed to the Potsdam Palace in the Rhineland. We are very grateful to the masters from the Tower of the Thousands of Laws. Ludwig's ruling has been put on a costume, although he has been white-haired. There is a sharp gas belonging to the military. The ruling adult, this is a member of the ABI's Law Council, Cold Will, Lord Calcid. He is the person in charge of this reconnaissance operation. Jenna, the daughter of the Duke of Nemours, began to introduce to both sides. These 3 are Master Ferry, Master Markgar and Master Charles. Jenna is a very beautiful blonde woman. She is just over 20 years old this year, but she has completed the challenge of the Master's card. She was promoted to become a magician of the protective school and became a man of the Tower of the Thousand Law. Hearing the Tower of the Thousand Laws, he once sent a legendary spellcaster and 4 magical masters. Obviously, this represents that the Thousand Law Tower attaches great importance to this raging plague. Ludwig is also relieved to govern, for a long time. The rhythm of the Rhine, he has been worried that the Tower of the Thousand Laws will reject his request. I have prepared a hearty lunch. I hope that you will enjoy the deep cold will and the masters. No, the ruling adult. The plague is raging. Every time a quarter of an hour is delayed, more people are tortured. Please take us to the place where the plague first broke out as soon as possible, Calcid said blankly. Ludwig was more happy to hear this, and he immediately called his son. This is the 4th night of the Rhine Knights, Reinhardt, who will lead a night column and you to the place where the plague broke out, New Waga Fort. Reinhardt made a standard welcome etiquette. His eyes swept through the guests of several thousand law towers and then landed on the only woman, the magician Jenna. She has a brow and a smile, a bit of a baby fat face, looks very cute. She has a strong book, which makes her very different from the aristocratic girls around the power. She is unique, also very chic, at first glance, touched Reinhardt's heart. Jenna is a girl who loves to laugh. In the face of handsome, the Prince of Reinhardt, who is most in line with the aesthetic of the Rhine, she nodded slightly reddishly. The 2 eyes looked at each other and there was a sigh of relief in my heart. Soon, the 5 reconnaissance squad members from the Tower of the Thousand Laws were escorted by Reinhardt and his knights to the new Waggart fort in the north, standing on the high wall of the Potsdam Palace. Ludwig. The ruling party sent them out of sight. I hope that this plague can be quickly terminated, otherwise my people will be under tremendous pressure. The enemies in the dark have chosen the Rhine as the first target of attack. I want use knives and swords, iron and fire to tell them that you have chosen the wrong object. The new Waggart fort, hundreds of kilometers away, where the plague first erupted, has completely turned into a dead land. If you look down from the sky, the only new town of Novartis is the last town. There is also a living atmosphere in the town of Neuer. In fact, because the Rhine people are almost a nation on horseback, at the beginning of the plague, many people have brought their wives and children, brought the most basic rations and valuables to the horse, and fled their homes. As the plague spreads, more and more survivors gather together, and Neuer is the place where more than 5,000 people have gathered, the only place to go to King Dublin, but the bridge ahead it has collapsed and there are not enough boats, they have been unable to leave here. Among the 5,000 people, the proportion of the elderly, children, and women is very high, which is more than half of the total. This is also the case. Their actions are so slow that they are finally staying here. Among the 5,000 people, even a baron was not there. There were only 3 knights. They all had official knight ranks. Therefore, they were elected as managers by all, leading a group of herders and hunters and veterans. The 100-person cavalry squad is responsible for the safety of the entire town. Since the people in Neuer town have not found any signs of plague so far, the atmosphere is not too tight. The cavaliers have begun to organize labor to build bridges and build boats. If there is no accident, it will take up to 3 days. Transfer everyone to the other side of the river, and the food is enough, so the people here are not desperate. There is also a small church in the town of Neuer. The presiding priest here is over 70 years old. He has been so thin that it can be blown off as if a gust of wind, but he still insists on walking back and forth in every gathering point in the town. The wounded, the dead in the family, prayed and blessed. It is because of the command of the 3 knights and the comfort of the pastor that the heart is no longer anxious, and everything seems to be moving in the right direction. Soon, night fell, everyone began to fall asleep, because the town's housing is not enough. Hundreds of people gathered in the chapel, sleep in the hall of the church. Has begun to enter the winter, here at least can isolate the cold wind. Joey's home is in the town of Neuer, he just turned 16 this year, is a knight apprentice, following one of the 3 knights studying. Tonight he is responsible for the vigil and stands on the high observation deck of the town. The father gave him the only thick cotton coat in the house. However, in this cold winter night, his whole body was still frozen and he had to tremble in the small space of the observatory, giving birth to some heat. To fight the cold. Just as he looked up again after he looked down, he suddenly saw a pile of fireflies appearing in the distant fields, shining with a green glow, one on one. How can fireflies appear in winter? Joey thought that he was blind. He blinked his eyes and looked at it. The green light still existed and he was gradually approaching the town of Neuer. What is this? Joey stretched his neck and looked at it carefully. His vision was very good. Under the starlight, he was barely found to be a humanoid monster with their feet, their bodies happening. The horrible distortion, the flesh and bones are mixed together, and the green light is their blinking eyes. My goodness! Lord of mercy, what is this? Joey subconsciously stretched out the rope. As long as he pulled hard, the alarm bell would sound, but at this moment, the cold ice of the bones stuck to his back. He turned and saw, a ghost of ghosts has drifted up, the green eyes are in front of him. The next moment, Joey lost his senses. His soul has been swallowed up by this ghost. He is weak, and his right hand loosens the rope. The ghost stood quietly on the observatory, overlooking the entire town of Neuer. Behind it, the endless army of the dead is marching forward, like a mighty torrent, unstoppable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 498. Although Joey standing on the observatory did not sound an alarm before dying, in the face of the atmosphere of the deceased, the hound in the town of Neuer made a wild roar and quickly awakened the crowd. The 3 knights quickly put on the armor with the help of the cavaliers, and rode the horses. They raised their swords high, but they saw a sea that was drowning. The fire of the green soul burns in their cheekbones, and some of them wear the armor of their lives, and they hold weapons in their hands. In the vast ocean, they are dotted with figures of people wrapped in black robes. The old priest walked out of the chapel with his own wool shoulders and trembles. Even with his devout faith, he was shocked by this horrible Bohai sea. Praise the Lord. Please give grace and fight against this evil. He prayed piously, but the Lord of Glory did not respond to his prayers. The old pastor fought the last Yu Yang, stirred up the power of the whole body, and then only fainted the pale milky light on the tip of his finger. This little bit of divine power, even a one-ring magic cannot be displayed, the old pastor helplessly sighed, the light on his fingertips is so dim. Rhine people are not afraid of evil. Warriors, ride your horses, charge, the only second-order knight, Flo, raised the knight sword in his hand and turned to the knights who had been lined up in a neat queue. Shouted. They are knights and must be rushed to have enough combat power, so they can't fight these horrible monsters in the narrow streets of the town. Not to mention the fact that you are your own relatives. If you let these monsters rush in, it will cause huge casualties. At this moment, hundreds of cavalrymen were all ready for the final preparation. They saw the distant ocean in the distance, but at this moment, even if there was more fear in their hearts, they knew that they had to fight for a battle. There was no retreat in the back. Your own loved ones. The Rhine people launched the charge under the leadership of the three knights. Their horses accelerated along the only road in the town. The horseshoes burst into flames. Three knights rushed to the front, and soon the field outside the town and the ocean crashed into it. The Fro knight waved the sword of the knight in his hand and used the breathing method. His powerful moment instantly smashed a skull of the skull together with the entire shelf, and even the fire of the green soul dissipated. The Fro knights have a big heart, these bone shelves are not terrible. Under the leadership of the three knights, the Rhine people rushed into the sea, they desperately stifled, as much as possible to kill these seemingly endless bone shelves, guarding the family behind. These new cockroaches are too weak, even ordinary people can deal with them, a Black Robes shook his head in dissatisfaction. After all, this is not the status of the bones, the power of the dead spirit has been attenuated. Another Black Robe did not care, there are more than 5,000 people in front of this town, all resistance is in vain, they will join us soon. Or let it speed up this process. The first Black Robe swung a large sleeve, and a cloud of erosion flew to the middle of the Rhine knight. This green, erosive cloud was poisonous and eroded, quickly breaking through the cavalry's armor, eroding their skin out of a wound, and even many people's eyes blurred, almost losing sight. This three-ring spell does not last long, and blindness is only temporary, but this is enough. This three-ring spell quickly intercepted the Rhine knight who had already been charged and got into more and more warriors. In the package, Fro knight knelt with an eye, this eye was sore, the entire cavalry squad had contracted into a circle, and he stood at the head. Assault, charge, Flo knight once again shouted loudly, the sound of the earth, full of tragic generosity. Assault, charge, the knight's breathing became so fast that they knew the situation was very bad, but the Rhine people never surrendered, they would rather die in the hands of these monsters, but also fight to the last moment. It's a sad mortal. Their strength is not worth mentioning. Only this courage is worthy of praise. The Black Robes stretched out their arms and gave a horrible laugh. Join us, I will treat you well, will you become a warrior in the army of the dead? The Flo knight was about to open a skeletonic armor, but he suddenly felt the vest cool and turned his head, but it was a ghostly soul. The sturdy armor of his worth of money is simply unable to resist the power of this dead soul. His heart is sore and the whole person has a painful sorrow. He danced the knight's sword in his hand. This sword is already the most powerful sword in his life. He broke his own limit. If he can recall this memory and sentiment many times, he will soon be promoted to the middle knight. However, this effort is futile, and the long sword passes through the ghost's body, but it does not cause a little damage to it. The next moment, the heart of the Fro knight was finally torn open. The only one of his eyes was full of anger, but he could only refuse to fall down and fell to the ground from the battle. The death of the Flo knights drew a tragic mark on the fate of the Rhine cavalry. Soon, hundreds of cavalrymen were killed, they only eliminated dozens of crickets, and this mighty bohai it is not worth mentioning at all. Join us, your Wu Yang still has some effect. The Black Robes made a huge magical array on the ground. The knights also had their war horses. The flesh and blood were sacrificed and their bones quickly changed from white to white. In the dark colors, their souls did not return to the endless river of death at the moment of death, but were constrained in the cheekbones and turned into a miserable green soul. Although there is still a gap between the real Death Knight and the gap, there is always a regular unit. The black robe nodded with satisfaction, pushing, "My sacral cavalry." With a command, the brave and fearless knights turned their horses, and Bohai opened a passage for them. They again charged, but this time they pointed their swords to their former relatives. Everyone in the town of Neuer has long been awakened. They are worried but full of expectations, especially when the cavalry rushed out. They cheered hard, but the voice quickly fell, hopes instantly turned into despair. Now, the knights who guard the town of Neuer have become sacral cavalry, and 5,000 old and weak children can only succumb to the fate of death in despair. Lord, Lord, why are you abandoning us? Look at this world, what kind of disaster and suffering are suffering? You are the omnipotent billionaire, your glory shines in countless worlds, why give up on us? The old pastor burst into tears, and his last divine power was dimmed, and his faith was on the verge of collapse. 50 kilometers ahead, there is a small town in Neuer on the Nei River, where we can take a break. The guided guide pointed to the north. In the direction you pointed, I sense the breath of the dead, and life is dissipating. The investigation team from the Potsdam Palace has been very close to the town of Neuer, and the cryogenic Will Kelsed looks dignified. He quickly took out his magic wand and gently waved it. The knights of thousands of people were surrounded by green wind. The knights of Reinhardt, in the town of Neuer, a battle between the undead and the living is starting. Kelsed said to Reinhardt, "Go and stop the tragedy, let's go." Reinhardt raised his sword in his hand. The Knights of the Rhine Knights, charge. The members of the Rhine Knights must be at least a middle-level knight. The 1,000 knights led by Reinhardt are the elite of the Rhine Knights. With the rapid speed of Kelsed's group, the speed of their charge is almost in the race against the wind. It took less than a quarter of an hour to get to 50 kilometers. Reinhardt took the lead. When he saw the situation in the town of Neuer on the other side of the Nei River, he was even red-hot, and the people of the Federation were being killed by monsters. Ice the earth, Jenna waved the spar magic wand. The Nei River, which is tens of meters wide, was frozen into a frozen road. The knights did not slow down at all. Instead, they made the last acceleration and crashed directly into it. In the battlefield, Dragon spurs, Reinhardt spurs high and falls from the sky. He is almost horrified by the anger. The strong airflow rotates around the knight's rifle in his hand, and the airflow even condenses into a similar Yulong's form. The rifle was stabbed and aimed at the sacral cavalry. The will of these sacral cavalry had been manipulated in the hands of the black robes, and the knives were aimed at their enemies. The 5,000 people in the town of Neuer had already suffered most of the casualties. Hey, Reinhardt's night gun is almost like a tornado, easily destroying every sacral cavalry on the edge of the storm. Nearly 100 sacral cavalry under his dragon's spurs, almost all it became a sacred bone. This is the power of a diamond knight. The black robe in the distance shocked. The Potsdam Palace sent the most elite knight. We must temporarily avoid the edge and inform the plague ambassador. I am sorry, but none of you can't go. Kelsud suddenly appeared next to the two people, and instantly two deep blue cages completely frozen them, together with the body and soul, fell into extreme cold. The mighty oceans couldn't stop the knights of Reinhardt and the Rhine Knights from venting their anger. Compared to the rapidly spreading plague, this tangible enemy is the favorite of the Rhine. Enemy. The combat power of a dragonfly is not even better than that of a first-order professional, and the Rhine Knights are the most prestigious knights in the whole of the Orient continent. The fighting power of the two sides is not at one level, and the army is crushed in an instant. The battle is over. It was not until this moment that the people of the town of Neuer, who had lost their loved ones, had a painful cry. Although the massacre was only a quarter of an hour, the casualties were extremely terrifying and the death and injury were heavy. Reinhardt walked down the horse and came to the door of the chapel, but saw the dying priest. He pressed a 3-year-old child to his body and his body was pierced with countless wounds. Reinhardt is full of self-blame. If he can be faster, these people could have been saved. Jenna walked over to him and gave a sigh. Reinhardt, you have done your best. I must destroy the enemies behind this plague, even if they fled to the horizon and fled to other planes. Reinhardt clenched his fist and made a solemn vow. It seems that it is true. It is really a good thing for the old friend who buried the bones, Kel-Sud said with 2 black robes in the ice. The dead army, the undead King Bards was unwilling to be lonely, and finally began to try to touch the world of Orient. It's the plague they spread is the deceased they summoned, Reinhardt said with anger. For the magician, torture is a very simple matter. Kel-Sud's hand was gently attached to the ice, violently reading the memory of the soul of 2 black robes. However, he just started to read, a powerful will instantly felt that the souls of the 2 black robes quickly withered and dying, nothing left. The plague messenger, Kel-Sud was not angry, although only a little bit of news was discovered, it was enough. The new Wagga fort has become the production base of the deceased army. The secret we are looking for is there. People, I am Reinhardt, the knight of the ruling adult, a member of the Knights of the Rhine. You are safe now. Reinhardt summoned all the living Rhinemen. The remains of your loved ones are buried here. Well, their sacrifices will never be forgotten. I swear to avenge them. Going south through the frozen Nile River, you will soon be properly placed and continue to live happily. The brave knights who were transformed into sacral cavalry by the Black Robe, Reinhardt personally dug a huge tomb and placed their cheekbones in it. Although Reinhardt ended them personally, he did no regrets, but an increase in the anger and hatred of the evil enemies who manipulated the deceased. The dead priest got the most decent burial. The 3-year-old child he saved with his life survived and was unharmed. He was replaced with the cleanest and tidy priest's robes, lying in the coffin, buried in the cemetery behind the church. Saying goodbye to the group of people who were saved in desperation, the investigation team of the Thousand Law Tower and the Knights of Reinhardt continued all the way north to the new Wagga fort to investigate the final secret of the plague. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 499. The former Wagga fort is a beautiful castle on the banks of the Rhine, the richest land in the William family's fiefdom. The cattle and sheep everywhere has nurtured the Rhine warriors from generation to generation. The new Wagutberg is also a rich land. The Nei River passes through here and irrigates a large number of good fields. The new Wagutberg was originally the largest granary in the Rhineland, but now these land is being distorted. Reinhardt is introducing to Jenna. They are riding a horse that is blessing the group to accelerate the spell. However, the land that has been seen all the way has been infected with the color of the yellowish withered, and even the ancient trees that have lived for hundreds of years have lost their vitality. The beautiful land is being distorted at a speed visible to the naked eye. The closer the new Wagutberg is, the more obvious this phenomenon is until they see an anti-natural phenomenon. What's going on in the distant sky? Reinhardt suddenly raised the tone. Obviously it was early morning. Why did the black sky appear in the sky above the new Wagutberg? A huge purple-black reticle is like a balloon, enveloping the entire new Wagga fort. The powerful magic is condensing, everything inside is mysterious and undetectable. Cold will Kel-Sud frowned. As a legendary caster, he perceives the magical power of terror from the dark sky in front of him. Such a sky has become a long-standing magic phenomenon. To accomplish such a big deal, there is only the undead king who buried the bones, the founder of the necronomic school, the third law Bades. Hallo Cold Will, do not know if you can destroy this black ball of light. I want to lead my knights to eradicate evil, completely eliminate this group of enemies spreading plague. Reinhardt turned his head and looked forward to seeing it. This legendary caster from the Tower of the Thousand Laws. Kel-Sud was silent for a long time. He finally said slowly, it's hard. The dark sky in front of us is the pinnacle of necromancer and shadow spells. Only the real legendary magician can finish it. The great spells transcend the existence of the usual 9-ring spells. Even in the 1,000 family towers, I am afraid that only 2 titles of legends may have a certain grasp of this spell. My spiritual power cannot penetrate this darkness. The sky, but my spirituality tells me that there is a very strong existence in this sky. We must evacuate quickly, otherwise. We rushed thousands of miles, and finally came to the enemy. You actually let me retreat, Reinhardt angered and rushed. My people are killed, my kingdom is being invaded, I would rather die in the battlefield, and never will retreat without honor. Reinhardt, Jenna yelled out loudly, this is not just a war in the Rhineland, this is the war in the whole of Orient. At least we have figured out who the real enemy is and has collected it with enough plague and distortion samples. The reconnaissance mission has been completed, and now is not the moment of the final battle. Reinhardt clenched his fists. He hadn't been blinded by hatred. He hated and glanced at the huge dark sky in front of him, turned to the horse, and flew away. The Knights of the Rhine Knights followed Lienhard and left, leaving only a few magicians of the Tower of the Law. Hallow of the Cold Will, why is the undead king so arrogant? He is in the blatant screaming of the whole world, Jenna asked in a puzzled way to Kelsud. Call the world? He is showing power. The Dark Council is about to be held, and Bards is the convener. He wants to be the speaker of the Dark Council. Kelsud shook his head. We must evacuate immediately, here. Too dangerous. Kelsud quickly summoned a portal, and the 5 mages sneaked in and instantly left the land of the Rhine Union. My old friend, why don't you leave them? A legendary caster, the Prince of the Rhineland, and 4 magical masters, what a delicious little snack. The new Wagutberg under the dark sky has completely changed. In a world, the Black Plague land spreads here, and huge buildings with one fortress after another rise up. The horrible war machine is gradually being built. The bodies and skeletons in the slaughterhouse are being transformed into death by the necromancers. The power of the great army. In the center of the dark sky, the dialogue is the 2 most evil creatures in the world of Orient, a demon, a lich. Both of these creatures have a great name for the multifaceted face, the Devil's King's Wise and the Third Law, the Undead King, Bards. There is no time for us to really make a difference, Bades, the Third Law of the Lich form, said with a low voice that penetrated the soul. At the end of the original contract, the Orient continent there is a huge disaster, and all the kingdoms and forces will be self-sufficient. That was the moment when we really launched a full-scale attack. What I have to do is to let this dark sky stand on the land of Orient and show strength to our potential allies. My invitation has already been delivered, but there are still many people who have not responded. They are watching, they are swinging. The Orient world is so important, the more natural our ally is, the better. This is the best time since the birth of the Orient world. The wise Falraz swayed his demon wings, and his body was surrounded by a strong sulphurous breath. It was his truth that appeared here. Body, Ms Yenyu is in great trouble. She is self-satisfied and hard to make a sound. The glorious Lord is about to leave, his glory can no longer shine on the world, and Orient does not have a real God. Long the plan for the millennium has finally reached the last moment. This time, we will never fail. The 5 kingdoms, the Tower of the 1,000 Laws, the Church of the Glorious Lord, these enemies are still very powerful, but they are fighting each other and passively defending. Bade stretched out his arms. The strategic initiative is in our hands. At the moment when the original contract is over, the darkness will cover the whole world, and war and death will become the eternal theme. Very good, Bards, I support you to the throne of death. Even in the eyes of our devil, you are the best ally. Wisdom Falraz, the demon king of the endless abyss, facing humanity, the first master of magic, also the Third Law, said Bades, the undead king of the bones. From this day on, the dark sky shrouded the sky in the north of the Rhine Union and spread. The whole kingdom panicked. After Reinhardt brought back the investigation report of Cold Will Kelsud, Ludwig was in power for a long time, and the whole person seemed to be a few years old. He finally issued an order, and all the people in the entire Federation, who were close to the dark sky, quickly evacuated away from the expanding black world. This huge dark canopy almost shocked all the well-informed people. At the end of the original contract, the undead King Bades made such a shocking thing, the dark power was encouraged, and the confidence of the light power, but it has been hit hard. Our first law adults have not yet expressed their opinions and attitudes. In the Abyssfa's parliament, the seventh fatty Lara smirked. He has not been indifferent to everything in this world. I still have my own first name, and I think that whether it is the second law Grodic, the third Fabades, or even the fourth law, it has already surpassed his Tulafit. All other people, including Speaker Anthony, are silent, but this is related to the reputation of the legendary magician. No one can answer, and only Delilah is qualified to say so. The existence of the dark canopy is also a slap in the face of the Thousand Family Tower. This 9 ring is also a peak. Only the magic of the real legendary magician can be displayed, even the Abyssfa Parliament. Members can't do anything about it? Well, Stella, the existence of the dark canopy has made us faceless, but the Tower of the Thousand Laws does not need these fame. Anthony the Speaker comforted the Empress. In any case, Bades and the primary goal of the Dark Council will not be us. We must prepare for the entire army, but it is not the frontal collision with the dark forces. Anthony, this time is different from the past. The Tower of the Thousand Law can never continue to be a safe haven. It is easy to escape this big battle against the fate of the whole world of Orient. Everyone must be vigilant, be prepared for a decisive battle, continue to relax, and the Tower of the Thousand Laws is likely to be destroyed. Thank you for your advice, madam. I think we all have felt the oppressive atmosphere before the advent of the war. The storm is coming, Anthony sighed. Next, we will prepare for the specific preparations for the entire army meeting. A white light flashed through. Didala left the parliament directly. Her status is detached. She is not a member of the Abyssfa parliament, but she can listen and speak at any time, and her right to speak is also very important. The dark sky has risen over the new Weygartberg in the Rhineland and is spreading in the morning shelter. The morning sun, Eulizia, is chatting with Zyway. It seems that our guess is not wrong. This plague was spread by Bards and his necromancer. Compared with the plague of the Rhine Union, Parley is just a small fight. If I have not guessed wrong, they have only one goal, that is you, Eulichia. Zyway's mood is not heavy. In fact, in just 2 days, he completed the rune construction of the 7 Shengguang series, and the analysis of the source of light is being completed step by step. Perhaps it is a vigilant nature. I have always been hiding my own power. Eulixia smiled. Many deities know my existence, but they don't know how much light I have. It's like a melee, no one wants to be the first one, Zyway said with emotion. The morning church is far less powerful than the church of the glorious Lord, and it is not as planned as the undead King Bades. I don't know how many years. We must keep our eyes on it. It is dusk. It has not yet reached the deepest night. There is still a long way to go before dawn. Eulichia said her opinion on the big picture. It's a wise decision, and I'm the same as the Arcans Association. Zyway stood up and said, whether it's the morning sect or the Arcanist organization, it's booming. This upcoming sweep of the whole of Orient. The war in the world is a disaster and an opportunity. Bard sees only death, the devil see only destruction. However, Eulixia has light in your eyes, but I have seen the brilliance of Arcane. I don't know how to thank you, Zyway. Without you, the morning sect and I will fall into the entanglement of the knot, unable to grow and grow. Eulixia smiled softly at Zyway. We are very good friends, close comrades in arms. They are allies who belong to the same camp despite different pursuits. I hope that you and I can form an unbreakable alliance. In this dark world, the Guardian will finally the light and hope to protect the world. Unbreakable alliance. What a beautiful word, Master Zyway. I will make an oath here, and I will establish an unbreakable alliance with you, the Morning Sect and the Violet against this dark enemy. Eulizia was obviously impressed by the nouns proposed by 11 Wei, and she responded with excitement. The two clenched their hands again and reached an important vow to change the pattern of Orient. The structure of the plague virus is constantly changing, and the stable vaccine is very difficult to produce. Zai Wei took out an injection, but I still got a little harvest, although it cannot be completely cured, but it can also stop the disease from continuing to deteriorate. They will not become crazy monsters, although they will suffer a little bit of pain. Just add these reagents to the holy water and it will work greatly. With the holy water that can temporarily suppress the plague, not only the crisis of the Notre Dame is completely lifted, but I can also lead my pastors into the quarantine area to save the desperate people. Eulizia showed joy. The smiles of the people who are on the verge of life and death are the strongest, and the beliefs they can contribute are more and more sincere. I will continue to improve the system of the Holy Rune. Now it's just a little bit of a small job. But I can only stay here for 5 days. After 5 days, I have to go to the spiritual dream plane. White Raven's Schiller will return to White Crow City. Do you really want to attend the Dark Council? That is the gathering of the most horrible powerful dark forces in the whole of the Orient world. Even if I bring all the light sources there, it will be hard to survive. Eulizia worried, looking at Zai Wei. Do not worry, Eulizia, I have the way to protect myself. Zai Wei stepped in the room. I must see these future enemies with my own eyes, otherwise I will probably make mistakes in the near future judgment, and that is likely to be a fatal mistake, causing irreparable damage. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 500. King Oolong found that the quarantine area had begun to become a huge problem, and he had to be thankful that, thanks to the Bishop of Anthas and the Duke of Cretial, they convinced themselves that the decision was very timely. Otherwise I am afraid it's going to be overwhelming, and the situation in Pali is out of control. Even compared with the dark sky that was erected on the neighboring country's neighbors, Pali's current troubles are really nothing. With the conversion of the flu to the plague, there are about 80,000 infected people in the isolation area of the city of Pari, occupying less than 5% of the population in the whole city. Outside the quarantine area, the epidemic has been effectively controlled. However, according to the guards and the monitoring of the sorcerer's report in the quarantine area has become a desperate place full of hope, full of chaos, killing and death. All plague-infected people who were sent to the quarantine area did not have even one person to leave alive. They eventually ushered in the fate of death and became a monster in a horrible distortion. So the calm of the quarantine was quickly broken, and the guards, despite the blessings of the gods, were far from here, separated only by steel cages and magic enchantments. The quarantine area is like a big prison, but no one manages order. Only a small amount of food is eaten every day. In order to compete for scarce food, drinking water and venting inner panic, violence, killing, are happening all the time. And this situation is getting worse and worse. The quarantine area is falling towards hell. At this most desperate time, the bright Saint Eurychia walked out of the Notre Dame of Par, leading her pastors into the quarantine. Miss Eulizia, it is completely out of control. You are such a beautiful lady. I am afraid. Guards in front of the steel gate, stunned and looked at a white robe, full of holy atmosphere of Eulizia. They are at stake, they are on the verge of death. The benevolent Lord of Glory will never abandon them. Everything I do is for the glory of the Lord, Eulizia responded indifferently. I will send the most elite team of knights to guard you, but please don't go too far, ready to evacuate at any time. Thank you very much for your attention. So the gates of the quarantine area finally opened, and countless people were madly trying to escape from this horrible place, but they were greeted by sharp rifles in the hands of the knights lined up in a neat queue. But some crazy people have ignored the forest of steel. They would rather be pierced by a rifle, and would not continue to stay in this world of hell. Ulysses looked at all of them in grief, and she lowered her head, closed her eyes, and began to sing hymns. Holy holiness, holy light, shining the earth. Holy holiness, holy compassion, compassion. Holy holiness, holy prayer, pray for grace. The Holy Ghost of the Holy Ghost, the glory belongs to my Lord. The hymn sung by Eulichia is the most widely praised poem, the Trinity of the Holy Trinity. It can be said that as long as a believer of the glorious Lord, even young children will sing. Her voice is not big, the song is not as perfect as the music master Sophie, but this soft song has drifted so far, penetrating the entire isolation area. Along with her singing, the faint golden light lingers around her, like a sun, spreading the light out, emitting light and heat, illuminating this desperate dark hell. The priests behind her formed a choir, followed by the singer behind Eulysia, and several female priests took out the bottle filled with holy water and opened the cork. It's like throwing a large piece of meat into a dog cage, and the desperate plague-infected people are madly coming from all directions. Eulichia was unmoved and continued to sing the 3-1 hymns all the way to the center of the quarantine. The person in front gave her a big road, and the people in the rear were reluctant to follow the pastor group. Soon, all the 80,000 people in the quarantine area were still alive, and all the people who could move were gathered into a huge circle. Lixia and her pastor are surrounded by a small square in the middle. A team of guards who are responsible for guarding the priests are already sweating. They watched the people in front of them in horror. These people have begun to have distortions, flesh and blood, bones, and a terrible scene. Finally, Eulichia stopped singing the hymns, and she opened her eyes again. The people in despair, the glory of the Lord will not abandon you, Eulysia said in a clear voice, as long as you devoutly believe in the glory of the Lord will lend a helping hand in your despair, at this darkest moment, the glory of the Lord is still shining. Her eyes swept over the crowd in front of me. It was only 3 days. The distortion has already appeared on most people. More or less, if you don't change, I am afraid that after a week, it will become a paradise for monsters. It will inevitably be ordered to be destroyed by the king. But now, the holy water that has been improved by Zyway for the plague has emerged and can be supplied in large quantities. Those who have been shrouded in despair will provide themselves with the most devout faith, and she is convinced of this. I am the brilliant Virgin Eurychia, are you still honoring my Lord? Ask the believers to raise your hands. With the words of Eulysia, a pair of arms quickly lifted up, and the desire for life made these plague-infected people who had begun to be distorted grasp the last straw. They were filled with the eyes of the praying for the eyes. Eulysia, I hope that this beautiful angel like the angel can really save them. The Holy Ghost of the Holy Ghost, shining brightly on the earth. The hymn sounded again, and the golden light around the body of Eulysia was so full that her whole person seemed to be a golden sundae. All the plague-infected people felt a warm, bright force that was lingering around the body and was washing the body. Evil filth. Holy sacred 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 glory shines on the earth. As one led the way, tens of thousands of people in the square sang this sacred hymn. They really saw the hope of living and saw the dawn of life. Holy holiness, Holy Spirit, compassion is full of heart. The priests picked up the holy water bottle and sprinkled the holy water. The golden holy water turned into a bright rain that fell from the sky and landed on everyone. The holy water falls on their bare skin and falls on the horrible flesh that has begun to distort. The gentle light energy begins to heal the wound quickly, the distortion is being eliminated, and they are changing back from the horrible monster to the human form. Holy holiness, Holy Spirit, compassion is full of heart. Everyone continues to sing, many people are crying, this is the tears of joy, the cry of happiness. Holy holiness, pray for grace. Holy holiness, pray for grace. All those who have been saved are praying to the Lord of glory with the most sincere heart. It is the Lord of glory who saved his destiny with his great power. Almost everyone has become a believer. Ulysses raised her eyes slightly, and the glorious Lord was leaving the world of Orient, and the line of faith had been broken. He could not get anything from the beliefs of the Orient. And Eulizia personally presided over this rescue and prayer. These people's devout faith in the glorious Lord was directly transferred to her, and when the original contract was over, she would also play the morning at the right time. The name of the Lord, at that time, was the moment when the morning sect went from the underground to the stage. Holy holiness, the glory belongs to my Lord. Holy holiness, the glory belongs to my Lord. With the last prayer, tens of thousands of people's religious blessings are on Eulizia's body. Although she can't directly gain the power from her faith, this belief has made her whole person clearer and even brighter. The control of the source seems to have deepened another point. They actually improved the holy water and really purified the plague of the king. The messenger who spread the plague looked at the scene in the distance. Glorious Virgin Eulizia is really not simple, her strength is far beyond our earliest estimate. I must pass this news back as soon as possible, and Eulizia must first eradicate, otherwise she is likely to be the next Shining Lord. The demon messenger growled. You can't pass this message. Let's stay. Ziwei and Zero appeared at the same time. Two golden light of the holy light spewed out, turning into a golden shackle to entangle the plague messenger and the demon. This is the latest research on the 7-ring holy light rune of the West Ring, which uses the power of holy light to stun and control the demons and undead. This kind of control is very powerful and effective, and it can be said that it is very difficult to get rid of. The spread of the plague messenger and the devil's strength into the human profession are in the 8th order, but in the hands of the Westway, which has already resolved some of the bright origins, there is no resistance. They were originally hiding in the quarantine area that was ravaged by the plague, as a drop in the ocean, very difficult to find. However, with the move of Yulichia to purify the plague disease, all the people in the quarantine area were concentrated. Ziwei directly opened the real magic eye to see through the fog, and arrested 2 sinful prisoners in one fell swoop. The plague messenger and the demonic messenger were brought into the depths of the morning refuge by 11 Wei, and soon Eulixia also completed the ceremony and returned here. It seems that the undead king and the demon of the infinite abyss have been closely united and acted as the vanguard of the dark power. Eulizia apparently hated the breath of the undead and the devil. She frowned. The devil in the endless abyss is the deepest and most powerful dark power in the world. They even have no respect for the gods. I remembered that the lady I saw in the heart of the lake was very disrespectful and even exerted on Ms Yenyu. The intimidating demon of the abyss. Ziwei shook his head. Devil, which king are you loyal to? Yuli Shan untied the shackles of the demon on the demon, and asked. Eulizia, the Lord of the Morning, have you already reached this point? Inductively the strength of the bright light in the morning refuge, the demon messenger realized how little the kings of the infinite abyss looked at this. Demigod. Ha ha ha, kill me. Yulichia, and this wizard, all your efforts are in vain. The dark army will eventually break through the world of Orient, we will become the master of the new era. The demon messenger continues laughing. It seems that I am not afraid of the fate of death. The devil will only greet the end of true death in the endless abyss. We are here to kill you, but instead let you go back and pass on my secret. Yulichia smiled and debunked the demon messenger's calculation. You just be a guest here, I believe you will like this bright place. Oiric directly placed the demon in the secret hall of light, next to her bright source. This is the most terrible torture for the devil, even more horrible than directly annihilating their souls. The powerful light of the light radiates his demon body, causing him to make another painful mourning. This necromancer will come to me to deal with it. I am just interested in the necromancer spell. 11 Wei's hand is attached to the head of the necromancer. Directly use violence to capture his memory and knowledge. This is an 8-ring master of the necromancer, and belongs to the shackles of the undead King Bads. He holds the core of the necromancer spell inheritance, which is considered to be the blank area to make up for the last piece of the West. If it wasn't for some of the applications that had already been resolved, If it weren't for the glory of the Elysian sun, Sylvia could defeat the plague messengers and demons, but it would never be able to capture them so easily. In the next 5 days, Zaiwei was not eager to study the necromancer spell. He continued to complete the analysis of the power of the light, and Ulixia joined the work. Zaiwei strived to complete the construction of the general framework. The construction of the entire hall of the Holy Light rune system, the rest of the work can be handed over to Ulysses and Bishop Anses and others. As Ulixia purified the entire area of isolation, the clouds over Parley finally dispersed, and the quarantine area returned to order. Although the plague virus in their body could not be cured, it will not continue to spread, and their bodies are also deterioration and distortion have ceased. The new visitation system has begun to be implemented, and these poor people can meet with their loved ones. They have hope for life and become more and more religious about the Lord's faith. Eventually, the night before Zaiwei left Parley, he finally completed the construction of the Basilica of the Holy Light rune system. From 1 ring of magic to 7 ring magic, every level has a signature magic. Runes, and related laws have been summarized, and then only need to step by step, fill in the blanks, and transform each of the old radiant masters into the Holy Light rune. These so-called Holy Rune gods do not need God's gift, can be learned and mastered, can be completely understood as lights of the Holy Spirit to be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 501. When Zaiwei crossed the space barrier connecting the Orient Plane and the Spiritual Dream Plane, he saw the White Crow City, which was still flying in front of the White Crow, compared to the Orient continent, which had begun to appear like chaos. The Spiritual Dream Plane is like a peach blossom flower dedicated to the Mind Mage. The black and white world is immersed in a peaceful atmosphere. U.et.etw. When Zaiwei really stepped into the White Crow City, he was keenly aware of the changes that took place in the city. The white crows in the air were full of vitality, as if they were immersed in the vitality of life. This situation means the only possibility. The owner of the White Crow City, White Ravens, Schiller returned. 11 Wei took a deep breath and he was ready to meet with the spiritual school, the most prestigious legendary caster, and the meeting was not so dangerous compared to the possible dark parliamentary tour. In the Dream White Tower, Zaiwei once again saw 3 managers, Magic Master Jacques, Soul Hunter Manu, and Dai's disciple, female spiritual master Diffie. Diffie, have you completed the glory hunting and promoted the master? Zaiwei noticed the changes that occurred in Diffie. Her spiritual body has evolved, and the whole person's body has become crystal stable and stable. Thank you Davy's mentor. If you are not watching your perfect glory hunting, if it is not the glory hunting flag you borrowed, I can't complete the glory hunting in such a short time, Diffie snorted deeply. She is a woman who loves beauty, even if it is only the body of the spirit, it is also very exquisite. I just helped you at the crucial moment, it is important to start your own efforts. I looked around and asked Jacques, how is the recent White Tower? With the help of the Spider Knight, our development of the Jacques Wilderness was very smooth. Manu has already set up 3 pioneering bases on the front line. We have organized many battles against dream creatures, harvesting a lot of resources, and also have a lot of spiritual magic. The division was promoted in this pioneering battle. Of course, Master Diffie was the most embarrassing star in this battle, and she personally wiped out the 7-star Dream Beast, in front of the army. Very good, Diffie, as my student, you are already catching up with my mentor. Zaiwei nodded with satisfaction. I allow you to choose one of my collections as a master for your promotion reward. Really, Diffie showed a very happy expression. Although she was promoted to the Master of Magic, she could be said to be a poor and white. There were only 2 fine-level magical objects on the whole body, which did not match the identity of her magic master. The treasures of Dai's mentor are at least epic-level magical objects, including stars and feathers, snakes, spiritual stars, and controlling the pearls, which are almost as powerful as the legendary magic items. David, my proud disciple, are you coming back? Come to the White Raven Tower, I am waiting for you at the highest level. At this moment, 11 Wei's mind suddenly had an idea. It is necessary to know that Zai Wei is now a master of magic in many fields, and the soul level has already jumped to the limit of mortal. His protection of the brain and soul is very strict, so that the silent breakthrough protection can send ideas into all among the mind mage. Only the white crows cover the sun chiller can do it. Zai Wei looked up at the most central tower in the distance of the White Crow City. This tower towers above the earth, as if straight into the sky. The white light column descends from the sky, and numerous white crows grow in it, flying around the white tower of this holy place. Schiller is in the middle of the White Raven Tower. I got the instructor's call, I must leave first. Zai Wei's voice just fell. The whole person has disappeared from the dream white tower, and the next second appeared at the bottom of the White Crow Tower. As a disciple of Schiller, Davy also had the access and transmission authority of the White Raven Tower. He quickly passed the transmission matrix of the tower to the highest level of the White Raven Tower. The height from the ground has exceeded 1 kilometer. In the mind's dream plane, the laws of matter have changed. The powerful spiritual master is like a painter, who can paint on the artboard and complete his own design and conception. The White Crow City and the White Raven Tower are undoubtedly Schiller's ideas. White ravens covering the day. Schiller is standing on the edge of the highest level, overlooking the earth beneath his feet, where almost the entire spiritual dream plane can be observed, except that the smog in the distant fog forest can never penetrate. Schiller's spirit is very powerful and at the same time very restrained. His whole person is in a white robe. Even with the current ability of Zai Wei, it is impossible to judge what the strongest mage of the spiritual school is already. On the power level, one of the things that Zai Wei can confirm is that Schiller's strength is far beyond a legendary caster, but he has not yet taken the final step to become the eighth law of the Orient world, the next legendary caster. I heard that you have recently traveled to the main plane and rarely stayed in the White Tower, Schiller said faintly. I feel that my strength has entered the bottleneck, so I hope to increase my knowledge, Zai Wei calmly responded. Further, it is legend, you are more urgent than I thought. Time is not waiting, the world is developing rapidly. Once you fall behind, I am afraid I will never catch up. Can't catch up? Can the legendary caster be? Or the legendary? Or the so-called great arcane master? Schiller turned around, a pair of bright eyes looking straight at Zai Wei, as if to see through his heart directly. Zai Wei sighed, and it really lingered that the white crow covered the sun. His spiritual body similar to Dai's body collapsed instantly, and Zai Wei's own spiritual body shines like a glass, crystal clear, and distributed brilliant light. Such a spiritual body is so eye-catching in the dark and white dreams of the soul, which means that Zai Wei is taking another spiritual master different from the White Raven's Schiller. Path of. You are very good and very daring. You not only killed my disciple, Dai, but also dared to sway and impersonate him into the White Tower of the Dream. In the spiritual dream plane, I am Davy. Zai Wei slightly apologized. Please forgive me, Lord Schiller, I am only chosen for the curiosity of the spiritual school and the strong knowledge. I will choose this. Do. There is no legend of the spiritual school, and it has been included in the glory of the world by the Church of the Glorious Lord. This does not stop your curiosity about the spiritual master. Schiller, who was in the shadow of the white robe, continued to ask. There is light and there is shadow, and goodness has evil. Power itself does not distinguish between attributes. The key is to master and use it. In my opinion, there are many merits in the inheritance of the spiritual school, for the development of the magic system. A very important role can be said to be the past and the future, to fill the gap. The spiritual school began to pay attention to the spiritual power, and the use of spiritual power to the extreme. This is the field that the magicians of various school spells have been focusing on, the magic and spell models. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 502. The White Raven's Schiller, who appeared in front of Ziwei, gave his feelings completely different from those of other people standing at the peak of Orient. He is like a contradictive mixture, hidden under this white robe, like the sea of chaos, the source of the storm, the deepest darkness. His power is very large, but he can't control it completely, and change it. The main victor and the Emperor Dick Rabbi also lack some charm. Seeing these most powerful people, Ziwei's understanding of the road in the future is more and more true. In Ziwei's view, Schiller has come to an end in the field of traditional magicians, but the history of Elite includes warlocks. The legendary caster is not rare, but the real title legend is few. When Schiller wants to break through, he must make a change, and the invitation from the undead King Bades is likely to really touch Schiller and pull him into the Dark Parliament. Although the Mind Master is not so good in frontal combat, it can play a very powerful role in the dark, controlling the monarchs, nobles, and generals at key positions, detecting intelligence, disturbing order. These are all for the Mind Mage. It's a good show. 11 Wei's thoughts were bold. He not only tried to persuade Schiller and mixed into the Dark Council, but also tried to bring this White Raven to the Sun into the Arcane Division's camp. Whether it is the Lord of Change or the Emperor of the Emperor, although they have become the first Arcanists of Orient, they still have more important identities and the power of their own operations, and they are not so valued for the identity of the Arcanists. Your understanding of spiritual spells is very chic. Schiller's words interrupted the association of Ziwei. I really want to retrieve your soul, a primary schooler on a remote island, in just 3 years. Time has made a very powerful legendary monster, which is extremely rare in the history of the whole of Orient. The speed and situation of your rise even exceeds the original 6th Lowolst. My growth is accompanied by a new concept. This road is ultimately attributed to the road of the Arcans. Ziwei did not reveal the identity of the embarrassment, and talked in front of the Master of the White Crow, national. Since then, the growth of the magician has been accompanied by all kinds of accidents. Every key moment, every choice of the road will affect the ultimate achievement of the wizard. Only a few of the best and fortunate people can stand out from the crowd. On the throne of the strong, their success can only be looked up, but they can't be copied. Tulafit is like this, Sir Schiller, so I am. However, the arcane master is different. The arcane study is the objective law behind the phenomenon of things. The pursuit of the truth of the universe, all the mysteries will eventually become the knowledge of arcane. All the luck and chance will be countless times. The experiment was cracked and eventually became a way that everyone can learn and imitate. The future world will be the world of the Arcans, and I firmly believe that. Everything, Schiller's mouth under the white robe sighed, you are too young and too arrogant, but it's perfectly understandable that a young man under the age of 20 is close to the legendary field. Naturally pride is qualified, but you know too little about the power above the legend. Can you create these amazing legendary legends of the magic school? Can you copy it through your arcanist road? Arcane is not omnipotent, genius is not mass-produced. But compared to magic, arcane can greatly increase the lower limit. The system of normative arcane theory will be more helpful to every hope to master the magic. People come to study, so in the future arcane civilization, the number of arcans and magicians will far exceed the present. Under such a large population base, I believe that there will inevitably be enough to compete with the legendary legends in history. The master, even more brilliant than the predecessors. Schiller fell into silence, and he did not believe in the future of the arcane described by 11 Wei, but the teenager, who was only a teenager, saw him a real miracle. Yes, he was out of anger after he realized that his proud disciple, Davy, was replaced and replaced. However, when he found out that this person was the founder of Arcane, he established a possession in Violet. After thousands of magicians and the Arctic division of the Academy of Magic apprentices, he was in a very difficult mood. If the arcanist Sci-fi is really a disciple of his own, it is really a matter of luck, so he did not do it, but chose to talk to this daring young man. In fact, the invitation from the undead King Bates was too heavy, and it was so heavy that he had a dilemma. The prospects displayed by Bates were so wonderful, even suggesting that he could help him break through the final relationship and promote. For the real title legend. White ravens covering the day. Schiller knows that he has gone astray in the long process of groping. Although he has accumulated a powerful force, he is mixed and impure. These spiritual strengths and their own spiritual strength through glory hunting, already completely mixed together, cannot be stripped, cannot be excluded. Even the spiritual wizards of the entire White Crow City are learning this method to enhance their strength. Every powerful wizard will encounter the ceiling, which is why the legendary caster of the spiritual school is only the important reason of Schiller. But in the front of Sci-fi, Schiller saw another way of the spiritual master. His spiritual body is as pure and shining as the glass, just like a brilliant diamond. This is definitely not a spiritual school. The spiritual body that can be achieved, even for Schiller, has great reference significance. Whether in theory or in reality, Schiller was touched by Sci-fi. For the spiritual wizards who lead the spiritual dreams to join the Dark Parliament, Schiller is also worried. There are too many dark evil powers in the Dark Parliament that existed since Teku. Such parliaments obviously cannot unite, and the power of the spiritual master is too much. Thin, once caught in the whirlpool, it is likely to be broken, so Schiller's life and effort will be scrapped, which is the price that Schiller can't bear. Can you show me how your spiritual body is built? Schiller broke the silence and asked in a low, hoarse voice. 11 Wei showed a triumphant smile, so that Schiller would not easily fall to the darkness, then his own dark parliamentary trip was basically no problem. Sci-fi passed the whole set of spiritual inscriptions to Schiller. His spiritual body was built with the set of spiritual inscriptions. Sci-fi gave up a lot of useless dross in the traditional spiritual inheritance, and chose the most elite and most appreciated part. In conjunction with other magical spells such as emotional magic, a complete self-contained inscription is constructed. The mind inscription is a set of spell inscriptions that can be learned through learning and embody the spirit of the arcane. To be continued.